Sakshi, will you share screen and we can start? Thanks.
Good morning. In a socially distanced world, Design United is an optimistic digital platform for collaborative design and connection. Digital platform for collaborative design and connection. Design United was created in March 2020 during a period of intense lockdown and quarantine measures within the region. The aim behind Design United was to create an optimistic space for regional dialogue, connections, collaborations, and opportunities for young regional designers and design practices. A much needed network of support and peer mentorship during these uncertain times. Talented young designers and design studios working on design innovation with an approach that is relevant to our South Asian region have been invited to be a part of the platform. We also encourage design students from the region to share their work, be involved in the dialogue, and to be an active part of Design United. Design United, most of all, believes in creating a community of designers and design knowledge that is largely contextual with focus on contributing to the environment and our community. Design United believes greatly in the spirit of collaboration and idea exchange. Welcome to Design United's 38th Design Conversation, a conversation with two talented design firms from the subcontinent, Studio Brio, Mumbai, Rotterdam, and Studio Seher, based in Karachi, Pakistan. I'm Varna Shashidhar, founder principal of a regional landscape practice, VSLA, based in Bengaluru. I'm supported by my wonderful Design United and VSLA team in this endeavor, along with Clayworks Spaces. Clayworks creates flexible co-work spaces that focus on productivity and sustainability. They also offer complete work from home solutions. Design Conversation and Design United has featured talented emerging designers from our region, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, selected for their innovative approaches and practices that bear a deep resonance with the place they are from. Design United also firmly believes in interdisciplinary conversations, learning, believing that this will lead to a cross-pollination of ideas across various design disciplines and therefore richer collaborations. We've also had brilliant mentors, regional designers with great expertise and commitment to mentoring younger generation of designers. Our recent mentorship module featured two inspirational regional designers, architect Sanjay Mohe from Mindspace India and architect Tanuj Goenka, director at Kerry Hill Architects, Singapore. Next month, we have a series of exciting new practices, Studio Roo, C-Lab Gujarat, The Architecture Story Chennai, Ruini and Pulasti Sri Lanka. So please continue to join us every week on Saturdays for the conversation. With this background to Design United, let's move to the much anticipated presentation and conversation for the day. It's indeed a delight to introduce and welcome architect Shefali Balwani from Architecture Brio, Mumbai, and architect Seher Aziz from Studio Seher, Karachi, accompanied by architect Huzefah Haroon. Shefali Balwani, who is the principal of Studio Brio, studied at the School of Architecture, CEPT University in Ahmedabad. She established Architecture Brio, an award-winning architecture firm based in Mumbai, and now also with a studio in Rotterdam, with her partner, Robert Verrijt, in her hometown, Mumbai, in 2006. They recently established their second studio in Rotterdam. Architecture Brio's work spans a vast variety of cultures, climates, landscapes across the Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia. The studio believes that architecture should remain a backdrop to life rather than taking center stage. The firm has received numerous awards, including JK Cement's Architect of the Year award. Welcome to Design Conversation, Shefali. Our second presenting studio is Studio Seher, and we are delighted to welcome architect Seher Aziz, who studied liberal arts with a concentration in painting and architecture from Bennington College, Vermont in 2001. She also has a master's degree in architecture from Yale School of Architecture in 2006. She has worked with internationally renowned firms, Robert Stern Architects in New York, Benish Architekten in Stuttgart, Germany. She returned to Pakistan in 2009 and worked with studio Tariq Hassan and later with Raphael Vinoli Architects in New York. She established Studio Seher in 2018. Seher was born out of the desire to create a singular vision that amalgamated the elements of storytelling, art, and innovation to all aspects of design, from architecture to product, from set design to branding. The studio is committed to creating spaces that are both beautiful and meaningful. Seher is joined by Huzefah Haroon. Huzefah graduated from the Indus Valley School of Architecture and worked with Studio Seher for the past few years. She has recently established independent practice, currently working with in collaboration with like-minded individuals. She's also teaching at the Karachi College of Architecture. Huzefah is a part of Design United's editorial team. Welcome to Design Conversation, Seher and Huzefah. We request Studio Seher to share their presentation. Thank you.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting us, and we're really delighted to be on this platform. We're really excited by the work you guys are doing, and we're happy to be here to share some of our work and engage in conversation around design and the themes that are sort of prevalent in our part of the world. So thank you for your introduction, and I want to just sort of jump right into it. So as we discussed, today we'd like to share a few projects that we've put together. And the theme that we wanted to focus on, or sort of the topic for this conversation, was really beauty and the brutalist. And this is a topic that has been close to our hearts and been very prominent in our design practice, because there is a debate that we are always having about what kind of mark we would like to leave in the world around us. And to us, like great design starts with a conversation, and that conversation can develop in so many different ways. And the projects we've selected today to share have a few aspects or themes rather, that are prevalent in a lot of our design process. So with that, we would actually like to start with the first project that is actually in India. And it was a really fun collaboration project with the Jahannama Palace Hotel Group. And it's a project that's very close to my heart. And sorry, I've just lost the video. Right, so this is the Buri Safari Lodge in Madhya Pradesh. It is on the outskirts of the Buri Wildlife Sanctuary, which is one of the largest tiger reserves in central India. It's a really beautiful part of the country, and the reserve itself is a vast tract of forest, as well as the natural habitat for a number of wildlife, endangered species, including the sloth bear, the leopard, and as well as the tiger population. The park there has really worked very hard to reduce encroachment. And so the setting that we find ourselves in is really one that is both rustic and beautiful, with a lot of history and culture of its own. Huzefah, you want to join in?
So the context of this entire landscape was that we get a lot of rains here, and it's a grassland which sort of attracts wildlife to it. So we wanted to create a constant connection with the outdoors in this entire context. We started with the guest block where we had the reception, the library, and the lounge, which was sort of grounded to welcome the guests into this environment. And we had these constant framing of the outdoors and bringing them indoors through views and openings. Moving on to the accommodation and guests, which was sort of lifted because the area sort of gets flooded during rain, for which we had to sort of make the accommodations raised and we sort of also wanted to create a welcoming and a light structure which doesn't intimidate the environment, rather becomes part of it. In terms of layering, the structure was expressed separately with different materiality, and the walls were sort of placed in line with the structure. So each element has been defined separately, with textures being adopted from local hand plaster techniques that the local people sort of helped us develop. This is one of the outdoor courtyards as soon as you enter the space. It's a middle space in terms of where you get a view of the outdoor courtyard, the entire wildlife scape, and the indoors as well. So the communal areas are sort of laid out into a U shape where the extended fourth direction is where the entire landscape fits. It frames the entire thing, with the middle courtyard being this nice indoor-outdoor courtyard where one can sit and enjoy the entire surroundings. The interior was, since the walls were a combination of hand plaster and concrete, we wanted to bring softness to warmer, earthy materials. So we used wood and cane. And overall, we had a muted palette because we really wanted to enhance the greenery that was around it. So in order to blend in and again, highlight the outer environment more. We had created various frames and vistas where we sort of always had this constant connection with the outdoors, whether it was through windows or clerestories, which brought in natural light. So with this, we also incorporated tribal artifacts in order to connect this to the natural context. So even in furniture and the interior of the space, we wanted to express each joinery and structure. So there was a lot of, while the overall feel of the space is very simple, a lot of details were emphasized in order to enhance the overall feel of the space. This is one of the isolated decks for the accommodation, which sort of opens out into this vast wildlife. As you can see, the structure is sort of lightly lifted with the entire accommodation blocks resting on stilts. Each element from column to rafters and purlins has sort of been expressed in a very Japanese form, where we wanted to express all the elements that are brought together in order to hold this entire architecture up. Similarly, in terms of interior, we wanted to bring in a lot of detail while keeping the material to a limited palette of concrete, grays, white, hand plastered, and bringing the softness through wood, cane, and bamboo. This is one of the details of the screens on the outdoor deck. All of these accommodations were sort of offset from each other, so each has an individual private view of the entire wildlife and the surroundings. This is how the hand plaster was done, where we also sort of expressed all the metal structure. We didn't really want to hide it. In terms of the materiality, we brought softness through wood. So the doors were lightly naturally polished. Existing wood that the client had was also used in this project. So we had to sort of make do with local materials also. So the stone is all local on the floor. Hand plaster is a local technique, along with a lot of wood that was locally taken up.
I just want to jump in here as well and say that a lot of the furniture was custom made by a design practice in Bombay that we collaborated with, which was also very much an exciting process to have this cross-border collaboration and to have the effects of it or the products be really so close to all of our hearts and very beautifully crafted.
This is one of the furniture designs that we did. The bed itself has a very earthy, huge headboard. We wanted to bring in sensitivity to materiality in terms of furniture also. So this project was built from scratch, from architecture, interior to product designing. And all of this, we wanted to connect it in terms of one language. These are the accommodation bathrooms. We did a sort of a darker palette here with a dark gray concrete smooth plaster with wooden doors almost resting between them with detailing in order to enhance the materiality of each aspect.
Moving on to the second project, which is quite different in both its context as well as its program. This is a retail popular high street brand in Pakistan. It's a shoe store. They make handbags and shoes and accessories. We were approached to design their flagship store in one of Karachi's more popular bustling malls. And as we started the journey on how to develop the brand identity for this boutique, we really wanted to reflect on the journey that the entrepreneur and the brand itself had taken to get where it had gotten. So the story behind the brand was such that it was really very deeply rooted in the culture and history of this region. So when we took up how to formulate its form and identity, we really wanted to bring in something that was both local with a modern touch. So looking at sort of traditional architecture and traditional elements, we wanted to create something that was both modern and contemporary, but also deeply rooted in its origin.
The idea was to have the monolithic element of all Mughal architecture, and everything that was add on was almost frame-like and sleek so that it lightly adds on to it. So again, a combination of groundedness and lightness into the store. What we really wanted to bring out was we wanted to highlight the product in that way. So the material palette was all monolithic with hues of pinks. And the floor was, we wanted to bring in the terrazzo flooring back. So it was a combination of a light pink. In order to highlight the product, we did a play of indirect and direct lighting. And we brought in old architecture heritage elements such as arches in a very Scarpa-esque way. The entire feel of the store was, we kept it to the minimal so that the product remains the highlight of the space. In that terms, there was monolithic element in terms of the counter. The counter was sort of an extension of the floor with a backdrop of the entire walls behind it. With each shelving that was added within the islands was sort of an add-on it was an ode to how scaffolding sort of works in heritage or conservation elements, so that it sort of looks like the walls are sort of the walls are something that's permanent, while the island elements are sort of added on to look very sleek and elegant add-ons. This is another view of the display shelves.
Again, using both inset, deep set niches, as well as added on layers that create a glow to highlight the products in different ways. Using the language of the store becomes very architectural, while there is a constant play between what is heavy and what is deep set. Again, something that is very light, airy, and gently settling on the surface. Our third project for today is another project that, there's a theme that runs in a lot of our work, which involves developing both from the architecture to the interior to the products, and really trying to create a sense of place. What's very important to us is that the spaces that we create are actually quite well lit and airy and feel quite natural and almost underwhelming in that way, that it's a setting that you get quite used to without the design really impacting you. So this was a project that we did for Unilever Pakistan. It was the reception for their head office here in Karachi. And one of the design briefs that we had from the chairman, this project was done in collaboration with another fabulous design firm here in Karachi called Studio Subtractive. So we worked on this together. The brief that we got was that we wanted to think about the identity of Unilever and how it's really about the people and the experience of the space. We wanted it, while it's a reception, we wanted it to actually feel not very oppressive. We wanted it to be approachable, and we wanted people to feel comfortable. The reception becomes somewhat of a second home, which is a place that is neither office nor home, and becomes a central zone that people can come and meet and interact with one another, with outside visitors, without actually coming all the way into the office. So really what we wanted to create was almost like a club feeling, which allowed for you to use that space as if you might use your home or a club or a coffee shop, and really be something that is quite different from what a regular reception for a corporate office, what the face of the corporation looks like. So we created an environment that's very much like a restaurant or a hotel or even your home. So there were certain elements, including these sort of accessories that were brought in from antique shops, and all of the furniture was created in a collaboration with a furniture designer here in Karachi. We don't have enough pictures of that, but next time, hopefully we'll share more. And the last project we'd like to talk to you about today is another project that's close to our heart. It is a restaurant here in Karachi. It's called Loco, and it has it's mostly tapas and Spanish-inspired foods. Sorry. Loco is really, when we approached this project, we've done their initial branch as well, and they expanded over the last few years. And we wanted to keep that idea of memory and history. And and also create an atmosphere that is both a nod to the past as well as a look forward into the future. We created a facade that was a triptych of arches, deep set arches that framed the street, allowing for creating an outdoor balcony that allowed for an interaction with the street that has an outdoor space and also creates a sort of atmosphere that is connected not just to sort of reminiscing a more active street that now in Corona is actually something that is happening a lot, where most of our dining has moved onto streets and onto outdoor areas. We created these balconies that could engage with the passersby on the street and really create an atmosphere that allows the indoor and the outdoor to become one. The spaces are created by having these metal doors that fold out to open up into allowing the entire space to become one. The material here again was fairly monolithic. We used this terracotta color to bring in a warmth into the space that runs through all the walls in different shades. And the detailing that comes into the furniture as well as the lights is all handcrafted, locally sourced materials, cane lights, and locally made chairs. The flooring, we played with different shades of terrazzo that were done in triangular formations. And the chairs were also these Irani cafe style chairs that allow for light and color to spread through the environment. It's almost, we called it the rustic revolution, because the feeling we wanted to create in that space was almost like, flamenco has happened here, and there's, this is where the revolution would start in our minds anyway. Metal windows and deep set walls, niches create the seating area on the street level. And outside the street, we created a palm-lined view so that the cars on the street aren't so problematic. But that combination of that vibrant green against the deep set red, monotones and subtle plays of color really create an ambiance that becomes quite romantic in its feel. The use of brick and texture and plants and color, even the artwork, the rustic furniture, all harbinger to a time that has already passed and gone by, that is nostalgic and romantic in its feel, and creates sort of this magical space that allows for a memorable evening out or afternoon in, which was really something very important to us. And in all of these projects that we've shared today, we wanted to, and feeling of the space was always something that motivated us, how we wanted the space to feel, and where the design elements come in are really in the detailing and the thoughts that we put into the product, whether it's a rustic or a minimal or a textured surface material. Our approach is always to try to make it feel as natural as possible, as if it was really meant to be there. So that's, Huzefah, do you have anything to add?
So our overall approach to the design was in each space, we wanted to create an experience that makes the user feel things through the environment itself, whether it was through materiality, detailing, or the entire overall feel of the space. The idea was to have everything simple. We almost always didn't start off as simple, but we started cutting down on elements that we could do without, but then sort of detailed out the leftover elements that we sort of thought were best to create that environment that we really wanted to do.
And I think with that, we would end off our session, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Seher and Huzefah, for sharing your beautiful, understated, and yet very contextual work. Thank you so much.
We will be taking questions towards the end of the session when we have a design discussion. So request the audience to please save your questions for then. We would now like to request architect Shefali to share her work with Studio Brio.
Sorry, just give me 1 minute. Varna, is my screen visible full screen?
Yes, thanks.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, Shefali. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Varna, and the team of Design United for having me as part of this session today. And it was very nice to be introduced to the work of Studio Sarah through this platform. And for those of you who are not familiar with our practice, I just want to start with a little bit about our backgrounds, and because a lot of that has impacted the direction our practice has taken, as well as some of the influences that have shaped the practice. Although a lot of that has been circumstantial, our practice has also been one with a very strong and a particular direction. So I graduated from CEPT in Ahmedabad, and of course the teachings and learnings here when I studied were an architecture was taught that was very contextually spirited, environmentally informed, and structuralist and modernist at heart. And I realized when I went on to do an exchange program at TU Delft, this was also where Robert studied and where we met, that in a way that where we were taught, it was fairly dogmatic. And here as a student, you were you were offered a multitude of points of views and left to explore your own paths and interests, while being really offered a wide platform of viewpoints. This was also the time that the Super Dutch architecture was raging across the world, and it was an interesting period because architecture started to question the conventional briefs and programs and proposed alternatives. And it had the ambition to deal with some of the critical challenges of that time. And however, that strong emphasis on concept also often led to to a loss of the experiential and the physical quality of architecture, a loss to the process of making, and a building rather resembled what the blue foam model looked like, rather than emerging out of the logic of construction. So while looking for a place where architecture did emphasize on experience and materiality, an architecture that, instead of calling out for attention, would search for a continuity, we decided to work in Sri Lanka in the studio of Chana Daswata to get a closer understanding of Jeffrey Bawa's works. And of course, Bawa's works, for those of you who are familiar, seem to not impose themselves on the surrounding, but do the opposite. And this kind of tropical, wild Sri Lankan architecture that you see here almost determined his architecture and his conceptualization, and dominated and overtook it in reality. And this hotel that Bawa designed, the Kandalama Hotel, is sort of the highlight of architecture playing this disappearing act. And behind this blanket of green, creepers, and expansive rooftop lawns is actually a very straightforward and utilitarian scheme, very geometric, very man-made, very logical, and nature, is guided here by the human hand, but then over time has just adapted, evolved, improvised, and surprised. And Lunaganga, his garden, is, of course, one of his masterpieces. And here it's not so much about the buildings, but it's more about the principles that have been used of light, of scale, of proportion, of time. And so a lot of it is, a lot of the principles are similar to architecture. And one of the most fascinating experiences we had here was when we visited this lower level paddy field, which is near the lake. And on an ordinary day, it's a checkerboard pattern like this, and the lake, and they're two separate elements. And one day when we visited after a heavy downpour, the lake, the landscape, and the architecture almost collapsed and all became one. And this was very fascinating to see. And it made us realize that he did not, like Bawa, did not subjugate nature to the will of man, but in a way transformed how we experience that nature by creating these contrasts. And it only highlights the rawness and unpredictability of what nature can do to man-made built form. And this is our office in Mumbai. This is where we practice out of today. And recently we have last year set up office in Rotterdam. This is our workshop in Mumbai, which is part of the studio. So one of the most attractive aspects for us to work in India has been the kind of diverse variety and range of projects, with that we have been dealing with so far. While in a place like the Netherlands, it has so far been spared of these very concentrated peaks and valleys of wealth concentration. And in India, we're constantly used to dealing with extremes, whether it's in the economic status of our clients or extremes in the climatic conditions that we build in. And this has made us to have to constantly adapt, switch positions, and negotiate. And it exposes ourselves to diverse situations and build relationships and weave stories between them. And it has made us flexible and agile. And it also means that you're in situations where one day you may be arguing with your clients about which double door fridge to purchase, and the next day you are really finding solutions to build a house within that same budget of that fridge. And it means that our clients are very different. And this adds another layer of pluralism that we deal with within our practice. So this first project was also one of the first projects that was commissioned to us. It is in Karjat in Maharashtra. it's around the outskirts of Bombay. The first phase of this campus was designed by Haroon, and these buildings here that you see are part of his office. So we well, our work was started off with designing a master plan for the growth of the campus, and also to see what was missing from the program, from the brief, and how to optimize use of the existing buildings, and what was lacking in terms of infrastructure. So we, of course, started by talking to the users, the stakeholders, to understand this program. And what came out is that for people using the campus, there was a shortage of shaded, covered spaces to use in the summer and monsoon months, and have workshops or indoor sessions. So this is the building that we designed, that I'm going to show later, which is it's a learning pavilion, and it's a composite of two programs. It's partly a building, but it's also designed as a kind of challenge course. It's an interactive building and a play area. And we intentionally located it here. Of course, we could have located it everywhere, but we located it at the confluence of four design places. So there was a confluence of a hill, a stream. So the hill is right here. There's a stream. There's a field in the foreground, and then there's a river. So the elements of the building are placed with the stream flowing through, which is what you can see in the middle here. And the building sort of sits over the stream. And here you see how the roof straddles across, and it ties these different elements, landscape elements, together. So, and this building is a building with the purpose of, in abstract terms, educating children about overcoming challenges in life and overcoming boundaries. And it is an extension of the already existing challenge courses on the campus. Children, they learn to play and work in teams to achieve goals. And in the summer, there's a cool breeze from the river that cools the spaces, and of course the shade from the roof provides respite from the sun. And in the monsoon, you're protected from the rain, but also the stream that runs below the building really comes alive and gives a different experience of how you view the building. And often children's play spaces are associated with bright colors, but here we really wanted to emphasize on the experience of the natural environment. And so nature becomes, the classroom, and the classroom is outdoors. In the next few projects, I would like to emphasize on our work and its relationship with landscape, and how we as architects have learned to try and coexist with the land that we cohabitate through innovative typologies. So, of course, this is the countryside around us that we build a lot in, and the landscape is here undergoing rapid change, with a lot of urban citizens trying to build and occupy land in these parts. And the landscape is neither agricultural nor is it untouched. And we have seen that in rapidly urbanizing India, nature and its natural discomforts actually tend to increasingly get shut off from daily experience. There has been a reconfiguration of man's relationship with nature, and for urban citizens going to settle there, nature has either become a contained object to visit, or a display to be viewed from within a contained box. So That's the kind of duality that we are trying to, what interests us most is to understand each particular place and time, which approach to architecture is appropriate and can have a significant impact on the way we deal with our natural and built environment. Which approach is appropriate, and if appropriateness gets associated with what is culturally acceptable, of course, it leads to a nostalgic rootedness and it leads to cultural stagnation and cliches. But often this inherent conflict between context and climate of a project and its chosen typological and functional approach is what generates solutions that are unconventional and then unexpectedly turn out to be favorable solutions. So this first project we call it the Riparian House, and it's on the Western Ghats in Maharashtra, where you find this typical undulating landscape, a lot of rivers and streams that flow down and eventually feed into the Bombay Bay. And we asked ourselves whether we would be able to create different relationships between the new settlers and this rural landscape, and can we make the building such that it's barely visible. And here you see the building from across the river, that it sits just below the top of the hill, and it camouflages itself with the silhouette of this undulating landscape. And but it also sits high enough to, in a way, measure itself against this landscape in the distance and the view of the river. The climate here is quite a contrast from the summer to the monsoon. So in the summer, it's really hot and dry, and in the monsoon, it suddenly turns lush green. So the contrast is quite dramatic. And this is the building now, and of course, it looks all very natural, like it's always been like this. But building a house underground, of course, requires a lot of cutting and filling of land, and in a way impacting where you're building quite dramatically. And one can question whether doing this, kind of excavation is appropriate, and an intervention like this is required. But we felt that the long-term benefits of an underground house are high. The building is kept naturally cool, and it really reduces the need for external cooling energy, and and then that creating that comfort within the house by doing this was what we felt was the right approach at the time. So this is sort of a section through the house, and it talks about how the roof, the green roof, and the terrain below are connected through this experiential movement within the house. And you see that in the plan that the house really sits against this hill, and there's a courtyard at the back, and that creates the access through the house, which then connects to the riparian landscape below. And this is the natural landscape. Of course, you saw earlier how in the summer and monsoon, there's a huge transformation. We planted drought-tolerant fountain grasses to mitigate the transition from the summer to the monsoon, because those grasses are usually visible year-round. And the veranda that wraps around the house, because the veranda is an essential element of architecture in climates like this. Here we've created an additional bamboo screen, which animates the light that filters through, but it also creates a layer of privacy when needed in the house. And there is the building is sort of designed to age and weather along with the landscape, and there is something very sublime with this kind of collision or meeting of the two. There's a very synchronized kind of choreographed weathering process that takes place, and within which you can find a lot of comfort and joy in that experience. This next house, House in a Stream, is again, questions this conventional typology. In this case, it is housed in a pastoral landscape. And here we built it as one house that's split into two, and there's a stream that runs through it, in between it. And here the bridge and the pergola connect the two units, so you're really drawn out of the house constantly to experience this outdoor environment and climate when you go from one unit to the other. And there is a pool next to the entrance pergola that is a substitute for the stream. In the summer and in the monsoons, it becomes an extension to it. This is how the inside of the house is. Of course, the inside and outside shell are distinctly different. And you see that in the section as well, that the external shell and the internal shell have been modulated differently. We felt that the external form was responding to the landscape and the site conditions below. So whether it's lifting it or really resting on the ground, or the stream running below it, but the internal form for the spatial organization of the interior spaces had to be lowered in some cases. And so we took that opportunity by creating a false ceiling to create a different dynamic into the inside spaces. And in plan also, you see that there is a constant shift in access and spaces, and the building is almost like this organism which stretches and pulls itself in different directions to almost hug the contours, or peek at a view, and become really part of the land that is sitting in. And of course the form outside is this concrete mass, but inside we really wanted to offset it with these whitewashed walls and ceilings, and almost like contradict that heaviness of the outside. And floor to ceiling windows connect then seamlessly the inside with the outside, and are kept mostly open in the day. The heaviness of this, heaviness is in a way lightened by lifting these tips of the ends off the ground, and the homogene, it's almost like a boulder in a landscape, delicately balancing on this reduced footprint. And the homogeneous materialization emphasizes on the sculptural quality. And in this project, we really highlighted the contradiction between the land and the building. And here, the interesting part of the project is more in this denial or conflict, rather than in the hiding of the two. It's more about highlighting that contrast. This tree villa we designed is located in, again, 160-acre hilltop property. It sits almost 200 meters above that estuary below. And it's surrounded by dense forest. And when you enter, you have the mustard fields and a deck that wraps around the house that sort of leads you into the villa. This is where you enter the villa, and we use a very minimal material palette here. It is various whites interspersed with timber framing and windows. We really wanted to emphasize here on the horizontal openness and airiness of the large volume dominated by the thatch roof. And we wrapped the whole villa in a layer of operable glass. And these curved corners of the glazed wooden framework display a panoramic exhibit of the forest that's around, and the curves also create a sensual kind of luxury and bring softness to the space. And at night they create this animated and playful reflection and illusion of what is inside and what is outside. So the villa was sort of conceived as a celebration of the dramatic landscape by creating a series of blurred transitional spaces, each with different layers of transparency. And the restraint of the material palette highlights the surrounding greenery, and the crispness of the geometry and the slender proportions of the enclosure are intended to amplify all this nature that's surrounding it. And the architectural elements that you see here, the slender columns, are carefully curated, and they are focused more on coexisting. Here you see the bathroom enclosure on top, and it is basically it's crafted out of vertical timber panels and has mirror panel infill, which reflects the surrounding forest. So in plan, it is spread over 2 levels, and on the upper level, you have 3 enclosures, and then interstitial spaces which are occupied by different programs. So here is a small pantry unit above which there is a loft bed. There is a partly indoor, partly outdoor bathroom, and then there is a bed. The bed itself is within an enclosure. And the interstitial spaces are a lounge. This is a breakfast table and a small breakfast deck here. And of course, the free-flowing circulation creates this visual permeability across the plan. The other branches of the tree spread out across the bathroom before they exit through multiple circular openings through to the outside. We wanted to limit ourselves here by not using any wet construction. So the internal and external walls are made of timber posts, and they have an infill of acrylic or glass. And the floor is made here of decking and inside of terrazzo tiles. The bed itself is also, does not have any walls. It's just like this soft linen or curtained enclosure. And a spiral staircase takes you to the level below, which almost feels like it's suspended from top. It has this rock outcrop at the back. And so it really sits against that rock, and on 3 sides is just wild forest. And then you see the same in the section, the 2 levels sitting on the slope. And the bathroom is completely surrounded by the forest, and since it sits pretty high up, it is quite transparent to the view. So here we were really fascinated by the idea of, the kind of the uninhibited way that you could experience the forest and the landscape in this setting, and in a way only have the forest, the eyes of the forest really looking back at you. And this is also called the glass house. And it's a beautiful experience, that especially this time of the day when you start getting the reflections on the surfaces. Just the last project, I want to focus upon materials. And in our practice, we're really not focused on a singular preference of materials. We live in an age of scarcity and depletion of material resources, skilled labor, craft, and of course the architecture industry is hugely responsible, and it also makes the situation much worse by causing ecological degradation through the mass extraction of building materials. And of course, we as architects are responsible and do need to respond and react to these things. And we need to also empower people at local level to change their environments and become self-sufficient, to work towards a more resilient future. And we are constantly questioning what materials leave a smaller footprint. And in this last project is a response that we took for one of our sites. And this is an artist residency and workshop in Alibag again. Of course, in this project, another concern was it was on a coastal area. And when we deal with land on the coast, we are constantly dealing with the threat of rising sea levels. And that's the location of the project. On one hand, you could say, let's avoid building, but of course, building, the coastal areas are some of the most desirable places to settle in, either because of livelihood or because of the environmental qualities. And could we instead deal differently with the land and build in climate resilience? And I think this was one of the approaches that we wanted to use here? Can we use building materials that have less impact on these fragile ecosystems and are more future ready? And can we accommodate these rising sea levels? So this is the structure that we built. And at the Artist Retreat, it's poised to become a place where artists can work within a natural environment, away from the physical and psychological demands of city life. It's a community space, it's an art lab of sorts, and it brings together art, ecology, and society. We started the project by building a pond, and by digging this pond, basically replenishes the water table with sweet water in the monsoons, and it prevents it from turning saline in the dry season. And the master plan, you see a kind of orthogonal grid of structures, which in a way mirror the grid of the palm trees in the foreground of the plan, and then how the geometry of the pond offsets this rigid grid. And next to the pond here, number 12, we propose the workshop building. So the plan of the workshop is simple. There are two structures which are defined merely by a row of columns, two chopped off pyramid-shaped roofs with two skylights that are shift away from each other and define the two spaces experientially. And the typology is loosely based on this Ambalama in Sri Lanka, which is such a beautiful structure. It's one of the most beautiful public infrastructure projects of the early 19th century. So here, space, functionality, tectonics, materialization, structural essence, they all converge here, and it's heavy, it's down to earth, but it's at the same time light and simple. The spatial quality of the Ambalama is one of continuity while being anchored and rooted to its specific location. So the workshop building that we designed is a 12 by 9 meter tropical shed. And it's a grid of 1.5 meter columns and a 6 meter high roof. There are stilted columns here, which we made with galvanized steel, and the roof structure is made of bamboo V-shaped rafters. And there is a solar skylight on the top of the roof, which pulls up hot air from below and encourages a natural flow of ventilation. Here you see how the solar panels are integrated into the roof design instead of just being placed on it later. And that's a view from above. And because regulations don't allow us to build permanent structures near the coast, this was assembled as a kit of parts. It was completely manufactured off-site and then assembled on-site. And here you see the nut bolt connections that were used. The structures placed on these of the foundation of boulders. And bamboo is a wonder material, but it can be also very frustrating to work with because the local bamboo that we find here is crooked. It, of course, also tapers in diameter from one end to the other. And of course, a lot of the bamboo projects we see from Southeast Asia and Bali, they look all very beautiful and simple. And but we did not have the luxury of sourcing expensive bamboo, straight bamboo. So we worked with what we had, and we placed it in a V grid and a diagonal zigzag layout of the rafters. Of course, this also adds to the integrity and makes for a stronger structural frame, but it took away from the crookedness in places. And on the right, you see a detail of how the bamboo is tied to the cement board and the junctions of the ends tied with coconut ropes to prevent it from splitting. And here you see how the whole roof structure comes together. And here you see how the light keeps changing within the space during the day and animates the space differently, and then in the evening and night. So thank you. I'm going to leave with this quote by Aldo Naik, and I'm happy to take it up for discussions.
Thank you so much, Shefali, for sharing your design journey, your beautiful work, and your studio's approach and concerns.
Thank you very much.
We will now be opening our session for conversation. We invite the audience to please share your questions for our presenters. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome and introduce our moderators for today's conversation. Namrata Pandey, joining us from Kathmandu. She is an illustrator and also a final year architecture student at the Architecture Institute of Engineering, Pulchau campus, Nepal. Our second moderator for the day is architect Elora Ghosh, who joins us from Assam, India. She is pursuing her master's in urban planning from Sushant University, Gurgaon. She has a keen interest in writing and blogging. Both Namrata and Elora are a part of our Design United team. Welcome to Design Conversation, Elora and Namrata.
We request the audience to kindly share your questions for our speakers. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you so much, all the speakers. It's been amazing to know such wonderful projects and sharing your insights about it. I would like to throw a few questions, me and Amrita. So my first question to Shefali. So you have been part of so many landscape projects, and so for you, how much important it is to strike a good chord with the nature and have a balance like between aesthetics and wood and with nature, how important it is to strike the right balance when it comes to designing.
Okay. Of course, nature, I mean, the context is extremely important, but I think usually the designs that come about are, I mean, the starting point is often also, and I think the reason you also see a variety in the kind of typology or the functionality that the houses take is because of the briefs of the different clients that we work with. So I think it's client brief and context and then an amalgamation of the two. I mean, it really ever starts with us imagining that we want to, like, this is how the house should look first. So it's never about the vision of the house first. It really grows with discussing, developing the brief and responding to the context. And materials, design style, all of that really follows as a support to that. And in a way, that's what we find helps to enable giving our clients a house that, because otherwise it becomes really like an imposing ourselves, or our design onto somebody else's lifestyle. But I think that's not what we are trying to do. We're really trying to support the way they live and bring, and I think luckily for us, a lot of our clients come to us because they really want to experience nature when they build their weekend homes or other buildings, that they really want to experience nature and not really close themselves off from nature, and how we can support their lifestyle through design and developing typology is, yeah. So I hope I answered your question through that.
Yes, that was wonderful. First of all, I would like to thank architect Seher, architect Huzefah, and architect Shefali for sharing the outstanding works with us. And all of the projects were very inspiring, and loved the fact that they were so contextual and responsive to changing needs and so innovative. So my first question is for architect Seher and architect Huzefah. I was just going through a studio's philosophy, and one of them states that touched by nostalgia, we create spaces more from memory, not purely in their form, but in their ethos. And it would be really great to know, how do you communicate these values in your work?
Hi, Namrata. Thank you for the question. First, I just also wanted to say that I really loved Shefali's work. It was really beautiful. So it's really sort of it's, reinvigorated us as well. On that point, I think, I was listening to what Shefali just said, and I thought it was interesting because in a way, while program and site and everything is very important to us, there is something that actually starts with us. It starts almost with a feeling, and that feeling does somehow, it's not that intellectual. I mean, there's an intellectual element to it, but there is an emotional element to it as well. So how we decide that the space should feel like this, and that is sort of an inspiration, and which is why we talk about how nostalgia, like we're almost remembering feelings and remembering what that space feels like. So even where it's not that we've seen something like this somewhere, but it's actually remembering how you felt. So when we talk about loco or we talk about lodge, like that feeling of how the light should come in and how you should experience that space does stem from almost an emotional point, which is in a way like how you respond to art. So we think about spaces in a similar way, that while there's an intellectual investigation, and the form making and the mark making and the space making all does generate from an investigation that we do, but there's like a feeling that you want, sort of a heartbreaking kind of feeling that we want to express. I don't know if that answered the question.
That's wonderful. Now I would like to move to architect Shefali for the second question. And the studio, as we all know, your studio operates from two different offices, one in Rotterdam and the another one in Mumbai. So it would be really interesting to know about the dynamics of the two offices.
Yeah, of course, the office in Mumbai has been there for much longer. The office in Rotterdam, we only started last year. But the thing is, we always kept in touch with architecture in the Netherlands, whether it's through our friends that are practicing there. And of course, a lot of our talks now are with the idea of collaborating with practices. And, we've realized that we do want to keep our studio quite focused and small, and with growing and the opportunity to work on more projects, we really want to you work with this approach of collaborating with practices rather than really growing our internal team to become bigger and trying to manage all of that. But and over the years, we've always used principles of architecture that we have learned and seen or been in touch with in the Netherlands in our practice here. And one area that we're really looking forward to tap into, which practicing in India does not allow for practices like ours to do, is more public projects and interventions. And we really hope to take some of our learning there. And of course, the Netherlands also has a very strong stand on this naturalistic landscape with designers like Piet Oudolf and Henk Gerritsen and their gardens, and how they have really influenced public projects there. And we hope that we can work as interventions with this very strong landscape background that the Netherlands brings, and with the knowledge of our years of experience here, take some of that there as well. And there's a lot of promotion there of sustainable building materials, so whether it's cross-laminated timber, and I think Europe is extremely conscious now of materials that you build in, and that's again something that we've really been trying to explore more and be much more conscious of here. And I think we'd really like to explore that more in our practice in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Elora?
So I have question for Seher and Huzefah. So you have been like working in so many multiple projects. So any favorite architect's work you're truly inspired and you really look forward to the design principles and try to work on, try to bring that on your projects and, in your future projects or maybe in the projects you've already done or worked upon?
Huzefah, I'll let you answer that one.
I think the first architect that we really feel close to in terms of looking up to is Peter Zumthor. Sarah and I keep having conversations about his work because it's a lot of sensitivity in terms of the way he uses his materials and the way the entire experience is laid out in his spaces. For me personally, I feel from my trip to Sri Lanka, Bawa has been a major influence in terms of how nature sort of comes into architecture and how architecture is always secondary to the environment. So for me personally, I feel that Bawa has recently been a great influence in terms of how to build in a local context and how to create an experience with nature rather than in isolation from it. Seher?
Yeah, thank you so much. Any Seher, any inspiration for you? Any architect?
Well, yeah, I think the lineage would be Mies van der Rohe, Peter Zumthor, and more recently, there's a Danish firm by the name of Norm Architects, and we really love their work and their minimalism and their sensitivity to material and detailing. So that's sort of and Carlos Scarpa, of course. So there's a whole line of architects that we respect and admire, of course. These are naming a few that we talk about often.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'll just quickly take a call from all three speakers. So any favorite project of yours, and any good memories you guys have in that project which you have worked upon? Shefali, would you like to answer?
Sure. Favorite project? Well, I would say I think all the projects that we really were the first. I mean, I think one of our first projects was the project for the NGO Magic Bus, and I think when you just start your practice, of course, you are so much more hands-on and so much more involved in each and every aspect. And that project was again very cost conscious and budget restrictions. So the even though the structure looks very simple, and if you could just go to a company and order the bridge and the cables and all of that, but we really had to go to local markets, local fabricators, talk to our structural engineers, and so in a way, in our heads, we really built that, with our hands. Except we didn't physically build it with our hands, but it was. And I think as the practice grows, of course, you play a more mentoring roles to the teams, and of course you're involved with everything, but it's a different kind of involvement from your first few projects, and you take a lot more emotional stress and everything. So I think that just the memories of those projects are very strong, and of course all the learning that you do, you make mistakes with whether it's material choices, and you don't know the complexities of sourcing the right sand, and you really and I think all those experiences just make you so much more conscious, and make you make your choices so much more consciously in the following projects. So yeah.
And Seher and Huzefah, any personal favorite projects you would like to talk about?
I think I agree with Shefali. We really learn from every project, almost painfully, but there's still a lot of moments that we have really look back and enjoy thinking about the projects that we have done and seeing it in the world. What was started as a sketch and it actually makes its way into the world is really a gratifying, most of the time, a gratifying experience. Lodge, I think, was one of those, because also not being able to visit as often as we would have liked, and seeing one of the times I did come for a site visit, it was really exciting for me to see that most of the labor or the people working there were women in saris carrying their tashlas on their heads, and it was really wonderful to see it. And they came up to me and shook my hands and said, I think we were equally excited to see each other because they were happy to see a female architect, and I was happy to see them. So I mean, that was really, one of the moments that will stay with me, I'm sure, for a long time.
Okay, thank you. Namrata, do you like? Okay, Huzefah, you want to say something?
So
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just wanted to add on to the project making. I think the process of each project is so different. It teaches us and we learn, and everything is new to us in terms of learning. So the excitement comes with the learning and understanding of what that project can sort of add on to and what are the values we want to look at. Specifically, I would say that Sulafa, the shoe store that we showed, was a start of that journey in particular, because that was one conscious step where we wanted to look at each thing experience-wise. So the experience became really important for us from that moment onwards, and the journey sort of continued with Lodge, and then we moved on to other projects. So each sort of the process became really important in that project. So I would say it's very close to home in that regard.
Thank you so much. Namrata, would you like to continue?
Yeah, my question to all three of you is based on the pandemic, and what was the initial response from the team when the pandemic started, and what were the challenges that you all faced, and how you managed to work with the ongoing pandemic? I was going to answer first.
Sure, I can go first. So for us, the practice didn't really come to a standstill at all. In fact, we managed to get online quite soon, and the teams continue to work. And in fact, our practice has really grown during this pandemic. I'm now in Mumbai, and I met half of them physically for the first time. We hired people online, and everything went online. And I think there was so much more interest from clients who are spending more time in their homes or wanting to spend more time outdoors, that they really a lot of people reached out to us during this time to build homes and build, or not even homes, but just build. And I think people had a lot of time to reflect and realize on the importance of what the space around you can means, because usually you leave and you go to work, and then you're not really spending your whole day and whole time. So I think for us it's been very intense, and also then setting up there during this and having in a way, it was still a practice here, but I would say it made us more efficient. It made us very I think it brought us much closer as a team, because we really had to rely on each other. And I think it's been, for us, it's been, I would say wonderful. And now being back, our office is now open, of course, and being back in front of them again is a great experience. Yeah.
Sarah, would you like me to answer that first? For us, I can only speak personally. I think Seher can overall tell you how she felt organizing the team together. We had been doing a lot of projects in India, which had been all virtually coordinated. So for me, it wasn't easy going into that kind of coordination, because I'd done that through sketches, through mediums of detailing. If we had to understand it, was either through video call, through like messages, sketches, all of that. So that kind of communication didn't sort of lapse. But the slowness of the entire, like the time period that happened and the lockdown happened, really brought us to think about what we really value in terms of design and how do we want to take things forward. So that slowness really sort of brought a lot of awareness in that regards. Seher?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So I think that it's still sort of evolving in that sense, like just the direction that I think we want to take our work. And really, and especially now with COVID or the second wave upon us, there is so much that we have to think about, like really what is it we want to do, and what direction do we want to take our work, and the hours that we do have, how do we want to fill them, and what are the projects that are close to our heart. Prior to this pandemic, I think a lot of our work actually did have to do with restaurants and salons and outdoor, or more like public, not public projects per se, but more commercial projects. And to a large extent, that has really slowed down, and it's become a lot more sort of retreats or residential projects or something, sort of getaways or beach hut, or something that people are wanting to see where they live and get away from, as travel has really restricted. So there's a lot of people looking inward into how to develop what projects we can develop locally to get away from the madness, which is interesting. Like I think that is the right direction for us.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. I think it's time we take some audience questions for the architects. Right, Laura?
Yeah. So there is a question from Raj Shah from Mumbai. So the question is for Shefali. So he's asking how he's looking at the sustainable architecture in the dense urban and suburbs context like Mumbai.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
He's saying he's looking at the sustainable architecture. What is your outlook towards like sustainable architecture in a dense urban and suburbs context like Mumbai?
Okay, right. Yeah. Of course, I mean, a lot of our work is in non-urban settings, but I think in general cities, and I think we see this so much more in Europe, that buildings, whether it's housing or high-rise or anything, are so focused towards material choices. Of course, here everything is still built in concrete and steel, partly, but yeah, moving towards more sustainable energy choices is one thing. I mean, so like you don't see that in usual urban projects in the country, that yeah, the energy sources that are used or the materials that are used in construction, any of that, it's just whatever's the fastest, whatever's the most easily available. But of course, all that over time is leading so much, there's so much of an impact or burden on on electricity or water or yeah, and even the producing of concrete has a huge environmental impact. So of course, yeah, I mean, and having more green areas, whether it is within building facades or urban, landscape projects. So I think these are all different things that don't exist right now, but should become a part of urban planning and a guideline for housing and projects within an urban setting.
Okay, thank you so much. So there is another question from Megha. So she wants to know, what do you think is the future of architecture going forward? So she wants to have insights from, I think, all three of you. What do you think? Where is the future of architecture going after pandemic, maybe? Anyone? I think Huzefah.
Yeah, sure. I can start.
Yeah.
I think it's the answer is constantly evolving in terms of what the architecture is and how it's going forward. I feel that it has now become extremely important to consider climate and context and what's locally available, rather than us unconsciously using material just in order to make architecture look a certain way. Architecture for sure has become more holistic in terms of its user, in terms of its experience, how it sort of gets built. It's become more sensitive, I feel. It should become more sensitive if it isn't going that way. Yeah, that's pretty much what I can sort of answer.
Okay. I think that brings us to the end of the question and answer session. And I would like to say my final words. So the way the projects from both the studios had a very gentle balance between modern and contemporary, and then simultaneously attending to geographical, historical, and cultural relevances. And there was this mindful connection with nature and play with light, shadow, and meticulous selection of materials. It was all just outstanding, and it was a great opportunity to hear from you people. And thank you, Design United and Clayworks, for giving me such an opportunity, and Architect Shefali, Architect Seher, and Architect Huzefah for sharing your outstanding works. And of course, my co-moderator Elora for being such a cooperative co-moderator. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Both Studio Seher and Architecture Brio carefully negotiates architecture, interiors, landscape in a way that is deeply sensitive to the place. So I would really like to extend my gratitude from Design United to Shefali, Seher, Huzefah for sharing your work. Our thanks to our moderators Namrata and Elora for engaging our speakers in a thought-provoking dialogue today. Our audience for joining us, DU VSLA Clayworks team. Have a great weekend. Sakshi from Design United will share the upcoming series of events. Thanks.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having Architect Seher, Architect Huzefah, and Architect Shefali on the platform today. We'd like to extend our thanks to the Clayworks team for supporting this webinar and all of our other webinars. So far, Design United has successfully completed 38 installments of Design Conversations, and we have many more exciting speakers lined up, with designers across the spectrum joining us to share their thoughts. So please do look out on our Instagram page for our upcoming calendar. We have the founder principals from PUR Architecture Sydney coming on the 6th of February, alongside Brett Mohan and Shreyan's set from Roo Studio. This will be an extremely interesting session, and we hope all of you will be there to watch it. Please do follow our speakers on their social media to view more of their amazing work. Thank you to our audience for tuning in today and for your lovely questions for the speakers. Do also fill in a feedback form that will pop up on your browser on today's webinar. And join us and stay inspired. Follow us on Instagram to know more about upcoming events. And until next time, thank you, stay safe, and take care. I'd like to request our speakers to just hang on for 2 minutes. Thank you. Architects Shefali and Architect Seher, we would really love to hear your feedback on today's session, as well as on DU as a platform. Huzefah, you can also join in. I'll give you a minute to put your thoughts together.
You say you wanted us to give you feedback on the session today, right? That's what you said.
Yes.
And yes, Seher, if you want to go first.
It was actually really wonderful, and this is the first session. I haven't actually attended your sessions before, but I'm truly actually inspired. It's really a wonderful way to connect with other practices and be inspired by them. And I think one of the things that I would find, I feel like in this time that things have gotten quite introverted and we don't have access to a lot of the resources that we did or the conversations that we've had in the past, where movement is so limited in some ways, that it's really lovely to see another architect, another practice, another thought, another and really lovely, by the way, Shefali, really beautiful presentation. I loved your drawings. Your sites are incredible. And your approach to architecture is really quite inspiring for all of us, I think. So thank you to you to put this together. And I'm really looking forward to others. I'm looking forward to seeing more work and connecting with more people. And I'd love to be in touch. I think this would be a wonderful, these relationships or these connections are something that I look forward to maintaining in the future.
Yeah, I know it's funny when, like, if we would do a lecture together in person, we would, definitely talk after and at least know each other a bit. But online, you're on, yeah. So I think that's really nice that this has brought us together in some way, and yeah, to being also introduced to your work and seeing the parallels that, or at least the principles that we share, in our approach to design and the respect we have for materials and context, and that's nice that and I find this happen more often, that there are so many, and I think the practices you curate do have that common, like there is some kind of commonality or a common set of principles that bring these together, and it's nice how you pick out these from different parts of the world and curate them. So yeah, this has been really nice, and I haven't also seen many others, but this next session that I was just looking at and I think everyone does come from this kind of diverse set of, whether location or region, or that everyone is not just very local, that they really have a much wider set of influences in their practice. So I think thanks for bringing that all out in all of us and bringing us together. And yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Huzefah, would you like to say something?
No, I think DU is a great platform, as I keep saying this to you guys every time that we sort of speak and get a chance to speak together. Today, I would just like to add that I'm so humbled and awestruck by the work Shefali has shown. It's so inspiring, and I almost wanted to cry looking at your work because it's so beautifully done, and the thought process and the materiality that's there. Yeah, and I avidly follow the work that you guys do and the thought process that goes into it. I think Robert also did some presentation during this lockdown series only, and he showed this work where you guys were building a house on a hilltop, and he was talking about all this entire experience about the challenges and the struggles that you guys faced in that, how to take the material on that uphill area, and it's always so inspiring listening to you guys. It's almost like a dream to hear you guys talk and share your work.
I have to stop now, Huzefah. But yeah, I think for us, I think the more complex places have started finding us, and I think the most we get caught up with and I think clients with more and more complex locations find us, and then we have to deal with more complex ways to deal with those situations, which keeps us going. So I think that's I know which project you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. And yeah, it was really nice to attend this session and be part of it.
Thank you so much. I completely agree with Huzefah. I think your drawings were absolutely it's awestruck. Like, I'm awestruck, and it's really unique how you're able to respond to such complex contexts. And I really loved Sarah's work also, because there was just this very as architect Seher said, there was this feeling that you could sort of sense that is visceral. It's not really something intellectual. So thank you again. And Huzefah is an active part of DU, and hope that she continues to be. DU at its essence is about connection. So we do hope that you stay a part of our community, all of you, and we hope to have many more conversations in the future. I'd like to thank Namrata and Alora. You guys have been really amazing moderating this session. And yeah, with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.